AFR Talk.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I was completely totally wrong. I just went to the don'tfundobamacare.com website. Remember, that's don't without the apostrophe. The number of signatures as of moments ago, 669,398. Now, Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Mike Lee are going to headline a rally on September 10th, the day that Congress returns from summer recess, the day that Congress gets back, and Republicans all over the fruited plain have been ducking town halls. Ladies and gentlemen, they do not want to face us. You know why? Because they know that this tsunami is coming, and this tsunami is bearing down on them, and this tsunami is being generated by their own constituents, by their own Republican constituents. It's being generated by the people that sent them to Washington, D.C. back in 2010 in the first place to do something about Obamacare. Now, they've cast 42 votes to repeal. That's fine. I commend them for every single one of those votes. Every one of those votes was symbolic, and they knew it. This is substantive. This can actually get something done, and they don't have the courage right now to do the thing, to cast the vote that will actually get something done. So the tsunami has got to be the thing that sweeps and herds these Republican congressmen to do the right thing. So go there, don'tfundobamacare.com, and sign the thing. One last clip before we go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Here is Ted Cruz explaining what I was just saying before the break, where our primary problem is coming from and trying to get Obamacare defunded.
Right now, the people fighting the hardest against defunding Obamacare are Republicans. You haven't seen Democrats on your show fighting against us. Why? Because the Republicans are all shooting at those who are trying to work with the grassroots to stop this disaster of a bill that is killing jobs, that's driving up insurance rates, that's hurting the American people.
I agree.
How do we win? First, we get 41 Republicans in the Senate to stand together and 218 Republicans in the House. That's number one. And the only way to do that is to get millions of Americans to go to don'tfundit.com and hold our elected officials accountable. But second, once millions of Americans are energized, they in turn can hold Democrats accountable. You know, if you're a red state Democrat, if you're up for election, say in Arkansas and Louisiana, and you start getting calls from 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 of your constituents, suddenly the calculus will...
You know, Mary Landrieu in Louisiana, for instance, she said, look, if I was voting, I would vote for Obamacare again. But Ted Cruz said the initial problem, we got to overcome resistance, opposition from Republicans. Well, let's go to the phones. Do you want Republicans to defund Obamacare even if President Obama threatens to shut down the government? Let's go to the phones. Let's begin with Carol in Columbus, Ohio. Carol, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you so much, Brian. You know, I appreciate you every single day. And I have called my representative, Steve Stivers, and he said, we have to. The law makes us do this. This is the gobbledygook they're giving to us.
Now, let me tell you something, Carol, and hold your next thought. But the Republicans who say that nothing can be done are simply dead flat wrong, and they should know better. I don't want to accuse him of lying to you, but if he isn't lying to you, he is ignorant of something that is very fundamental. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has an entire category for changes in mandatory programs. That's what it's called, changes in mandatory programs. It is CHIMPS for short, CHIMPS, like the things that swing in the zoo. CHIMPS. They have a whole category for it. They've got a whole label for it. These are changes in what? Changes in mandatory programs. So the CBO says, yeah, that can be done. Congress can make changes in mandatory programs. They do it all the time. We've got a whole category for it. So let's not let these Republicans lie to us by telling us that budgetary changes cannot be made in mandatory programs. That's what the Hyde Amendment is all about. Medicaid is a mandatory program. But the Hyde Amendment, every year, it says no funds will be spent in the Medicaid program to fund abortions. You can do the same thing with Obamacare. Don't let them lie to us by saying it's a mandatory program and there's nothing we can do. If that was true, it would be impossible to get the Hyde Amendment. But it's been stopping abortions, taxpayer-funded abortions, since 1976. Anyway, Carol got on my soapbox. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will go back and tell them. And I want to tell the American people, every person listening right now, if you do not take this seriously, if you do not call, I mean, you can just have more misery and loss of our freedom, religious freedom. And I want to make one more point. The real problem, Brian, is our money system and the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve loans money at interest, and the Treasury has to print money to cover the interest. So if they stop spending, our money will be worthless because there's nothing behind it.
Yeah.
So this is what these corrupt politicians do. They sign our names to debts we pay, and now it's 16 trillion. How many trillion? They've made these promises, and they have to keep raising the debt ceiling and keep giving out stuff to be elected. It's corrupt wickedness.
Yeah. All right, Carol, listen, I appreciate it. In fact, the debt ceiling is a whole other issue. We don't have time to get to that today, but we're going to bump up against the debt ceiling in the middle of October. In other words, 2 weeks after they have got to meet some kind of deadline for appropriations, we're going to run into the debt ceiling debate. And, my vote is don't raise the debt ceiling, period. Live within your means, just like the American people have to do it, and let's get it done. Let's start in the middle of October. Don't raise the debt ceiling. Let's live on what comes in, like everybody in America has to do. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to David, Spring, Texas. David, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Well, I couldn't possibly agree with you more with respect to Ted Cruz. I love his attitude in the sense that he's basically come to emotional terms with the idea that there are going to be people that hate him and people that love him, and I respect him so much more for that. And I really respect the fact that he realizes that the money that he has the ability to vote for is not his. And I really respect the fact that he is actually also very much seems to be very in tune with the idea that rights come from God, not from the government. The fact that he doesn't feel as though he has the power to supersede that. And I really respect so far everything he said. And I realize that he was probably born in Canada, but if we can have a president that was born in Africa, I'm sure we can afford to have one that was at least born on this continent.
The reality is he was born to an American mother. I mean, his dad was working for, I believe, an American petroleum company up in Canada. John McCain.
Make that argument, then Obama's mother was American.
Yeah. John McCain was born down in the Panama Canal, but he was born to American citizens. Ted Cruz was born to an American citizen. His mother is an American citizen. He is, therefore, a natural-born American citizen.
Well, I don't subscribe to that same definition, but nonetheless, I respect the idea that Ted Cruz wants to, he has a plan, and what's completely beside me is the fact that we have so many people who are more scared about losing their jobs in Congress than they are in actually trying to do that which their actual job description is, which is to be a representative of the people.
Yeah. And this is the time, David, for them to hear from the people that they're supposed to represent. If they indeed are out to represent us, then they need to know what we think. They need to know how strongly we feel that. And here is the opportunity to let them know. All right, David, listen, I appreciate your call very, very much. And, I think, to echo what David is saying, I think a lot of people are just enthused about Ted Cruz. I mean, regardless of what else happens, just to have an outspoken conservative, a social conservative, a fiscal conservative, a national defense conservative. I like Ted Cruz. He's saying we shouldn't go into Syria because we have no national interest at stake there. And I'm entirely with him on that. Why should we spill American blood, spend American treasure in a country which will do absolutely no good? We have no interest of ours that is being threatened in Syria right now. It's a tragedy what is happening, but that is something that the people of Syria have got to work out for themselves. Anyway, let's go to Rebecca in Rogers, Arkansas. Rebecca, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, so
Hey.
glad, Brian, you're taking calls. Of course, I am totally with Ted and the rest of you guys. Defund Obamacare. And that argument is so easy to lay out, which I did, others did in town hall meetings. Steve Womack is our representative. There's still, I think there's one in Russellville tonight with Steve Womack. He's an honorable fellow who's having town hall meetings. And then he goes to Flippin. The town hall meeting I'm concentrating on, though, is the one in Fort Smith, which is just around an hour away from us in northwest Arkansas. So I'm going to push for the Benton County Tea Party, of which I'm a member, and Washington County Tea Party, and other tea parties in the area. We have to get a bunch on board.
Now, let me ask you this question, Rebecca, about Representative Womack. Was he pressed in this town hall meeting to move along with the defunding Obamacare plan? Was he pressed on that, and how did he react to that?
He was very much pressed. I was the first questioner, and I went through Ted Cruz's argument totally. I watched that video, and I had everything in place to answer everything.
Now, Rebecca, I've only got 30 seconds, but I want to get right to it. Did he push back against you? Was there any movement on his part, or is he still opposed to it?
Yes, another fella also pressed him. He is very frightened that if the Republicans defund, that the whole government will shut down. It'll be on the backs of the Republicans.
Yeah. You know, Rebecca, I got to let you go because I'm out of time. But that's the thing I hear over and over again. These guys are afraid of losing elections. What about losing the country? Prime eminently, how about being concerned about losing the country instead of losing an election? Focal Point AFR Talk will be right back after the news. Stay with us.